How's it going, people? Welcome back to the Supporters Club. Today we'll be discussing Aaron Ramsey, a player that will no longer be with us come the summer. A lot of fans debating whether he's an Arsenal legend or not. A lot of fans debating me in the past few months, telling me he is a legend. I think otherwise, but I brought a panel of guests with me today to debate it properly. So I've got Jordan from the Football Fans Podcast. Thank you for coming down, Jordan.
Me, man.
I've got Jack. You've probably seen his AFTV interviews here and there. Thanks for coming down, Jack. And Claude, a regular on this channel, obviously.
I don't know if they know me. Do they know me?
I don't know. You look in the camera and introduce yourself if you need.
My name is Claude, by the way.
Obviously, today we're discussing Aaron Ramsey. I want to start with you, Jack, because you're a bit younger than the rest of us. And a lot of the fans debating me about Aaron Ramsey tend to be from the younger generation. So I'd just like to hear your views on him.
When you speak of the term legend, you think about players who have been in the top side in the club's history. You think of the double winning team of 71, obviously Wenger's double winning team, the Invincibles, and the team that George Graham had at Anfield 89 that season.
Yep.
And that was also that would have been the case, not only because the players were been great then, but also the players around them and the situated circumstance. When you talk about Aaron Ramsey, you have to put him into the era, into the time where he's played at the club. And over these 11 years, for what we've had and the loyalty shown to the club, would I call him a legend for a spell? Yes. And the main reason is, if you look at his injury, being a young player, breaking into the first team and having that sort of injury, any player, regardless of who you are, will struggle to get back to where you were. And the way of the reaction of obviously how it went down with the Stoke fans, with the foul with Shawcross and whatnot, was I felt acted as that edge to Ramsey to push him and motivate him further to become the player he has become.
Yeah.
Where, yes, he may have been inconsistent. Some seasons he's been our best player by a mile, and some maybe not so much. But he's still kept very consistent over the years in what he brought to the team, and really established himself as an important player, important goals. And obviously, he helped us end the trophy drought. And obviously, again against Chelsea, only a few years ago, as the picture depicts up there. But I feel like he is a legend, as I said, just because people need to understand that in the era, he has been that compared to where he necessarily would have been where people look at Henry, Vieira, etc.
Yeah. No, I get you. And you know what? The era argument makes a bit of sense to me. Like, I understand where you're coming from with the argument. It's just that from my side of things, obviously with this one, I know I'm the host of this show, but I've also got strong opinions on this. With Ramsey, you mentioned the injury and the way he bounced back. To me, legends do stuff on the pitch. I've had arguments that Ramsey's a legend due to the way he's bounced back and due to his longevity at the club. I've had arguments that Oz is a legend due to when he signed for us at one of the poorest squads we've had in the past 20 years. To me, no player currently at Arsenal has done enough on the pitch for me to say they are a legend.
When I say with that point, it wasn't about that he bounced back and the way he recovered. It was how he was able to recover and then push his career on to become the player he was and score those important goals, be creative where need be, have the season he did obviously when we stopped the trophy drought, and how he's always forced himself into the side and been, when fit, a very established crucial role in our midfield. And that commanding midfielder in time, especially before Ramsey, there were times after obviously Vieira and Gilberto where we struggled to find that. Obviously had players like Denilson. Other than Seth, we did have that imbalance. And I think Ramsey brought that balance as well. I think he brings a lot to the side.
What it is with Ramsey as well, I had high hopes for him. Do you know what I mean? So I've been kind of tainted with that brush. And I know Claude wants to say something in a sec. I'll pass it on to you in a sec. But I just believe in between the time of the injury and then this season, his inconsistency has let him down in terms of his status at Arsenal. The last 4 or 5 months, he's been excellent for us. He's been committed, even though he's moving on. Fair enough, and I give him credit for that. He's acting very professional right now, but it's just not, for me, it's not enough to warrant that legendary status. Like I said, and Claude, you was about to say something.
I also blame the previous manager. I don't want to go into this. He never always used to move him in different positions where he weren't suited.
That's a good point. Left wing, centre mid, attacking mid.
So he's never had that comfortable position to play in, to show what he can do.
Yeah.
As you said, you pointed out, very inconsistent, and it's strange now that he's producing a few good performances, and suddenly you're getting a lot of our fans saying, "Oh, why are we letting him go? Why?" Because of a few performances this season.
Yeah.
And yet none of these fans were going on about 2 years ago to extend his contract. I never heard any fans going on 2 years ago, why are we not extending Aaron Ramsey's contract?
We were more about Sanchez and
now
Ozil.
you're hearing, oh, why didn't we sign him 2 years? Why didn't we sought his contract 2 years ago. Well, why weren't people asking that 2 years ago then? Why the contract weren't extended? You know why?
That's a fair point.
Because
Yeah.
he was inconsistent at the time. He wasn't producing performances week in, week out.
And you make a fair point, because it actually leads me on to another point, because football fans in general these days, in this new generation, they tend to look at 6 to 8 games and judge their opinion a lot based off them 6 to 8 games, like we've done with Ramsey.
As I say, our fan bases now, got to say this, our expectations are not very high as they used to be. They've gone very low.
Yeah.
And this is why you're going to get all this, oh, he's world class, he's world class. But in truth, we haven't got a world class player in our squad, in my opinion.
In fairness, though, whilst I do agree that Ramsey has shown that inconsistency, and for example, as you said with the 6 to 8 games, Ramsey, one thing he has done quite a lot over the years is have 6 to 8 good games, get injured for 6 to 8 weeks, and then it's touch or go whether he's back in form.
Yeah.
But the point, the one thing I do say, and I do understand that 100%, I do agree, but the point you make about us having no expectations, I actually don't think it's fair to blame the younger generation of fans, because I actually look at it on the flip side, which is that a lot of older generation fans have seen the, and my first season was the Invincible season, so I haven't seen any obviously other title-winning teams. Yeah. But people look at the Invincibles, look at the pre-2000 years of Arsene. They look at obviously George Graham, all these eras, and it's created a sort of entitlement in the fan base that everyone that seems to think we have to be going for the title, pushing every year. When the truth is, every era we've had where we've been good have come after a considerable amount of time we haven't. If you look at George Graham, we won the league in '89. We hadn't won the league since when he won the league for us in the double win team '71. Yep. With Wenger, we haven't won the league since 2004. One thing in our history, yes, you can say we've won all these trophies, 13 league titles and whatnot, but this entitlement isn't a fair thing to say when at the end of the day, every time we've had this great spell, even when Herbert Chapman back then, came after a period where we weren't that team. We were sometimes even mid-table. And it's like people only highlight these years and think that just because of that, we're Arsenal football. Yes, we're a massive club in the world, but that entitlement isn't a fair. It's create a very spoiled nature, I think, in the fan base as a whole.
It's not about being entitled. What I'm saying is, I'm not just blaming the younger fans, by the way. I'm blaming the old school fans as well, of their expectations of drop. I'm not just saying it's the younger fans. I'm saying it's the whole fan base in general.
No, you're right. I'll agree, because things like
it's not about entitlement. What I expect for a club of our size is to be challenging for. No one's entitled to win every year. Let's get this right. You can't win the league every year. But what you are entitled to, what you should be doing, is challenging for the title.
Yeah, I agree, because as fans, I agree, we're not entitled to win the league, because there's one league winner every year and 4 teams minimum have a summer to win that league. What we are entitled to as fans is a big summer window, because we are Arsenal Football Club. Even though we haven't won the league in how many years, we are a massive brand. Forget the football. We have money. We've been mismanaged over the years. So we as fans haven't been treated to a summer where we can look at that summer and say, you know what? We're moving into the season with new galvanised hope. And that's what a summer transfer window does. Jordan, obviously, going to you with Aaron Ramsey first.
With Ramsey, yeah. So I've heard the kind of phrase, we're a big club and we're a huge club. And for me, in answer to your question, if we call ourselves a big club, Aaron Ramsey's achievements at Arsenal are not legendary. So that for me is the answer to the question for me. If you're a smaller club, what Ramsey has done probably would warrant legendary status.
Makes sense.
And this is coming from someone that has been a big fan of Aaron Ramsey, and I agree. After the season, I think it was 2015 where he scored 12, 13, 14 goals.
13, 14.
It was 13, 14. He was on fire. The 2 years after that, he got a lot of heat from a lot of fans because he was very, very inconsistent. And I was backing him, and it was hard, but I was backing him because I think he's a good player. But I think despite the FA Cup winning goals, he's got some big goals against Tottenham, against United, against Liverpool, some good goals as well. For me, if you're a big club, to be a legend, you have to have lifted one of the big 2 trophies. I think if you're Spurs, if Ramsey was at Spurs, I think what he's achieved would warrant legendary status. I don't think we can call ourselves a big club and be hailing Aaron Ramsey as a legend. And it's your initial point about the fact that he's in an era where the team around him aren't amazing in comparison to the Vieira, other midfielders. I don't think you can move the dial in accordance to the era you're in. If you have standards and they don't move, and this is the standard, and if you don't meet it, you don't meet it. You don't bring it down because the team around him is not quite as good, so he gets a bye. for me, if you're a big club, you have big standards. And just to wrap up, I look at it like this. In 20, 30 years' time, will Arsenal fans look back and think, we should have given Aaron Ramsey a plaque, a statue, or a stand named after him?
No.
And the answer is probably no.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that he's not giving us great service and been a brilliant player for us, but legend, think of the word legend.
It's mad, yeah.
Is he a legend? Not for me.
Jack.
But that's why I made the point. I personally wouldn't have given Ramsey the deal based on what he wanted. I'm not saying he's a legend in his own right. I'm saying in terms of how he's been over this period, if you look at the era, yes, he would be to that extent. I'm not denying that he's been inconsistent. I'm not denying that. I agree with you. I would not have given him the money that he wanted. But that's why I'm saying I agree. But based on the period of time, he's not a legend in it's the term legend obviously based on the success and whatnot, but you have to put the era into perspective. Now, one thing I'd like to say is obviously of what you said about how we've been mismanaged, and I do agree that in a lot of cases we have been, but I also feel as a fan base, as a club, we've been quite unlucky. So there's this debate obviously that Gazida said when we made the transitions from Highbury to the Emirates that we'll be competing with the likes of Bayern Munich, and it's quite a misconception because what happened was actually very, very, very unlucky from us. When we were looking to move to the 60,000 seater stadium, ticket revenue was one of arguably the most important income that a club would take in. Yeah. And over those so many years, you had people like Abramovich and Sheikh Mansour, you had TV deals, you had sponsorships, and what we looked at, no one could have forecasted. It looked like we would have earned that sort of money to be able to go and compete. But the way the game changed, which no one would have been able to predict, cost us. And when people want to cuss off gazetas and whatnot, I understand the frustration because it's a very bold statement to make, but then again, if you look into it, it was very, very unfortunate. And I think if you look forward, it makes me debate what our greatest achievement was over the years. Because in any other team, if we hadn't have had Arsene Wenger, for example, we wouldn't have paid that back as quickly as we did. And I actually think when people will look at us over the last so many years, since the Highbury and into the Emirates days, the biggest achievement that's happened is that 20 odd years of Champions League, which has got us to be able to be at a time now where we're theoretically 5 to 10 years closer, as in like before where we would have been able to pay it off.
Yeah, so you still see a benefit in it.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
I disagree with you on that. You know, you're going about with achieved Champions League, yeah. But let's be honest with the teams. There's 4 spaces for Champions League, yeah. Right, you're saying we've overachieved in them years. But how many teams below that, right, below that top 4, can compete with us money-wise? No.
I disagree with that massively.
Hey?
I disagree with that massively.
Who can?
I'll tell you why. So, and this is one of the reasons why in the era I do find Ramsey to be a legend in the era.
In essence, you're bringing down the level of Arsenal Football Club.
But can I explain to you why though? Because of the misforecast that happened in that transition, we weren't able to go and acquire the place because we had to pay off a stadium, which we thought wouldn't have had to be the case to the same level of amount because obviously the tickets. Yeah. The reason why I cast Ramsey in that area is we've had to get Champions League. So for example, with players, for example, around him, if you think about it, Denilson, Shamak, Andre Santos, we've had some shocking signings over the years. Players who maybe would have been good in the French league, top goal scorers in the French league, I think of Javinho, who came here and they really didn't make the cut. But Ramsey was one of those consistent players that was able to keep us motivated and directed in that position. I know we've been out of form. I know we haven't been the Arsenal Football Club of old. I'm not denying that. I would love nothing more than to see the success days. But on the basis of where we were left due to something we would never have been able to even anticipate in a million years, we're able to. And onto Claude's point, just 'cause I wanted to clarify that. Onto Claude's point, the reason I disagree is, yes, in the past, you look at Chelsea with all the money from Abramovich, you look at City with the money from Mansour, and they were streets ahead of everybody. City bid, I think, 120 million for Kaka. The reason why that's changed is the TV rights deal has given smaller clubs a lot more money. I think it's now each team will now get from the Premier League deal alone, £80 million a season, and that's going up per deal. And that will go even up more when the likes of internet streamers will take the deal from the likes of Sky Sports and BT, which is obviously on the horizon. And that deal has enabled teams who would have only earned necessarily maybe 30 million max from sponsors and everything, to then add the other, and obviously sales and whatnot, to then they're on the 110 million mark because the 80 million pushed them that far. And everyone unlike leagues like La Liga, where the bigger teams get that money, it's evenly spread across the Premier League.
But Jack, we've still got more money than about 15 or 16 other clubs. So this is what I kind of say. What is different. Yeah, but
level's
what's the
changing.
achievement of finishing the top 4, saying we're finishing the top when we've got much more money than 16 other clubs?
But then
I'm
the
sorry.
points that- if you look at the points,
And to Jack's point, I don't think even if we are to kind of go along with his point that within that 10-year period where the finances in the game change, even within that 8, 9, 10-year period, I still don't feel that Ramsey's achievements warrant legendary status.
Yeah.
I think he's been a very good servant to Arsenal. He's scored some big goals, important goals. He's been professional.
Yeah.
And I think that if you think that in the last 5 years, you watch AFTV, in the last 5 years, only probably Walcott and Bellerin, maybe not even Bellerin, have had more heat than Aaron Ramsey.
Yeah.
They're probably been the 3 biggest players to catch the most amount of heat in the last 5 years. And so you might say rightfully so. And I think at times it's been unfair, sometimes maybe it's been fair. So while I like him and rate him and I'll remember him, I don't think even if we do bring the bar down because of what we had to go through in the transitional years, I still don't think his achievements make the cut of being regarded as a legend.
Yeah, because you know what? I look at this debate for one. We've got 3 guys here. I think
What-
we've been
what I
going for
will
about...
say-
One sec,
oh,
Claude.
sorry,
We've been
sorry.
going for about 15 minutes now. If I bring a debate here to ask, is Thierry Henry a legend?
Yes.
If I bring a debate for Tony Adams is a legend, if I bring a debate for Sol Campbell is he a legend, we would not talk about money, we would not talk about injuries, we would not talk about the way football's changed, because we'd have a lot of on-field stuff to talk about, which for me makes a legend. Right now, Ramsey's the topic. We've gone from wages to
No,
injuries
but-
to...
but- you have
to
to-
Jack's point though, to be fair,
It's
if the game had changed in that
You don't
Henry
know.
era, maybe Henry wouldn't have won 2 or 3, he wouldn't have won as many titles as he won. So that's maybe, I think it's worth factoring in. I just don't think it should be a full excuse as
Yeah,
to why
yeah.
someone...
So for example, on from that point, because I do agree with that. If you look at, for example, Arsene Wenger again here, and how he changed the game, how he changed the fitness of the players, how he changed everything about the game. That fast, more athletic flow you see in Europe came here.
Yeah, 25 years ago, yeah.
So I'm not, obviously I know that, but
Yeah,
what I'm saying is that if you look at it from across then, if you look at players like Tony Adams and whatnot, they were much more rough, old school footballers, and the game and the way the players have changed in that way. And I'm not saying Aaron Ramsey an Arsenal legend, but my point is that because obviously you can't categorise him with those sorts of players. But the point is you have to, it's how you define legend. It's how you look at him in that period of time, in that era of the club. I obviously understand that the likes of Vieira, Henry, Lumba, all of them, they are Arsenal legends. But the point is that, and just because you're not winning titles, doesn't mean that you're not bringing the on-field success in terms of what you could bring to the club, even in an era where it's not that great.
So if you look at, like Jordan said earlier, where for an Everton or for a Tottenham, and Aaron Ramsey of the past 11 years is a legend. But when you go to Arsenal or Chelsea,
if you're a big
you
club,
wouldn't.
But
you
in
have to judge by big
fairness,
club
in
standards.
fairness, yes, we are a big club, but that doesn't, as I said, that's why I made the point on entitlement, because we haven't been. And if I have to be realistic, if you look at it now, and we are on the level of a Spurs. We are at that level, and that's why you need to adjust your expectations. It's how you define legend. He's obviously not one of those elites, but in terms of what he's done in this modern era, compared to all the other players, yes, he probably is a legend in comparison to what else we've had of that era.
Yeah.
I completely agree with everything you both are saying, but
I
I'm just
will
saying
say
it's
this,
the
though.
leverage.
If Wenger left 3 years ago,
We'd have a much better player.
we'd see a much better
He'd
player.
be captain
I
now.
agree.
And
I
I
agree.
think-
he should be our captain.
I think
now.
the way Wenger treated him, pushing him around,
I
playing.
agree. I agree with that.
And I know for a fact that people have told me he never got on with Wenger at all.
Yeah.
He didn't like the way he was pushed around with Wenger, and I think on that basis, I've got a lot of sympathy for him
Yeah.
because I think
That does
I
play a
actually
part.
believe he could end up being a really top player at Juventus.
And although I'm sad to see him go to some degree, I think that it's good that we one by one get rid of a lot of these players who I call them Wengerized.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we need to slowly get rid of these players now, that the Welbecks and all these guys.
Yeah.
That Ram's a good player, he's done a good job, but if we're going to move into a new era, under new management, under a new regime, we need to be getting rid of these players now that have been tainted by
Yeah,
Wenger.
yeah, I agree.
Do you know what I mean?
I agree.
In
100%.
fairness, and I've got a lot of admiration for Arsene Wenger. Obviously, obviously before Emery, I never knew any other Arsenal manager. I was born in 2000, so I'm gonna be honest with the situation. With Ramsey and with Wenger, one thing that Wenger has been renowned for and has been spoken, where other players have spoken in the press, he's been very soft. He's very lenient because he has that sort of what seems to be that fathering aspect where, not like a strict father when it's just like you have to don't get the grades or it's this. It's He guides you. He
Protects
tries
them.
to, even when you're not doing well, he'll still play you to keep giving you that motivation to succeed.
Yeah.
So in times of Ramsey, for example, when we played that 4-2-3-1, when Wenger was adjusting from the old school 4-4-2, he'd always play one winger on one side and one more midfielder. So for example, Santi sometimes played on the left, Ramsey sometimes played on the right. Did it work? No, it didn't work always. But whilst it's fair to say with Ramsey, that's just the style of managing. On a realistic basis, any player who's played under Arsene Wenger or played any other different manager, no matter who it is, they would play different under one manager than another because it's that different philosophy. Emery's put in that significantly more, that higher work rate.
Yeah.
Whereas it wasn't the case though. I mean, every player said how there's so much more training, how much more
Robust.
physical it is, how much more, even the fitness side of it, it's so much more drilled into them. And that's why we've seen so many players improve under Emery. If you look at Bella and Xhaka, Iwobi as three probably very prime examples, it shows. But then with Ramsey, with Juventus, one thing I'm interested to see is will he necessarily get in their starting 11? Because obviously Arsenal fans look at him as the player we've known him as, but Juventus thrive off bringing in top players on frees from other teams. I mean, there was talk, I think, Rakitic when De Jong goes to Barcelona, something along those lines. And they've obviously got Emre Can, they've got Matuidi. Will Ramsey get in the starting line week in, week out? We don't know.
Well, for the money, they're paying him to. What they're paying him tells me, and I don't believe they're paying him 400, but what they're paying him tells me he'll slot into the first team. But what I know of Aaron Ramsey will be that he might not be first team by the end of the season. Be it injuries, be it consistency, one or the other, I'll assume, will hit him again. Because he is of like 11 years at this club. And you know one thing, just going back to the Wenger before we move to you, Jordan, Ramsey used to piss me off because
I agree.
Wenger should have been out 3-4 years ago, like Claude said. Aaron Ramsey was one of the main guys that would come out and stick up for that man. Now, if you don't like what he's doing with you, if you don't like what's happening at the club, don't come out and be the puppet and say, Wenger's the man in charge, this is the person we want.
But that's harsh though, because
Yeah.
as a
You don't
player,
have to say
you're
nothing.
not going to send out.
You don't
You're not
have
going
to
to
say
come out
nothing.
and say, you know what, Wenger, he's this and he's that. You're not going to do that, are
But do you think
Even
he
if
was sent out by Arsenal to say, go and support Wenger?
Well, after every game, the way the media works is they'll want a player, and it might have been that game he was the man of the match or the match winner.
Yeah.
So they would say, we're going to put Ramsey up. So it might have been out of his control. I don't know how much say he has in that. If he is put up, he's not going to slag off the coaches.
No,
even if he should.
Yeah, I'd rather him
he's
be
not.
quiet. That's my issue. I'd rather you not say nothing than
I would
support.
say that, but
One thing I don't want to see though is if we get in the Champions League next season, it's a big if. I don't want this nonsense, and this goes back to Claude's point about us as a fan base are dropping our standards. I don't want to see this thing where Ramsey comes back to the Emirates with Juventus and we give him a standing ovation before the game, we sing his name and we applaud. I don't want to see none of that nonsense.
No.
After the game, if you want to give him a clap, whatever, if you've won the game, respect that, fine. But I think...
If you look at, for example, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when we sold Vieira, when Vieira left us and Fabregas took his place, he came back the next season to Highbury in the Champions League. I think it was I can't remember which round it was.
Yeah.
Fabregas,
Obviously, that was the
brilliant.
season we got to the final.
Yeah.
And yes, we showed the respect, but it also showed that maybe even though we never really replaced the Vieira, what it showed on the day was Fabregas, the way he was developing, was that better player, and it showed the way forward. And in fairness, people always say when a player leaves the club, you have to replace them. Obviously, in terms of Vieira, that's one place we have lacked, so it's obviously not the right point to make. But in terms of Ramsey, everyone says we have to replace an Aaron Ramsey. Why do we?
Not like for like.
We
but
need to
a
bring a
body in the
player
middle.
in that will do the role. It will do a role for the way Emery wants to set out his team.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a shame also we're finally seeing a manager identify where Ramsey should have been playing 5-6 years ago.
That was my next question. I was
It's
about to ask all three of you, like,
this
his
is
best
not rocket
position.
science, and we're
His
seeing
best
now,
position.
just put him in that advanced position where he's got minimal responsibility defensively. He can break the lines, he can get ahead of the strikers, get in the box and score goals.
And going back to what you just said about you don't want to see us return next season against Juve, and that's
Some
another
people
thing
love
that
him.
pisses me off about our fans. When Theo came on for Everton, we're singing Theo.
That's got to stop.
When Giroud's warming up for Chelsea, we're singing his song.
That's
Like, the
gotta stop.
state of our fan base at times is a fucking mess. Theo what? Giroud now, fair enough. Giroud, he loved Arsenal, like he put in work, he wasn't the greatest player. Walcott was an
agree with
embarrassment
that.
at our club. How is our fans singing Theo?
And if you're a legend, you might get a pass. So if Henry came back to Arsenal,
Of course.
then maybe if you're a legend, then you might get a. But we're talking Theo Walcott
That's
and,
what I
and
can't get.
Olivier
In
Giroud.
fairness, and the difference, I don't think it's fair to summarise, put Walcott in the same category as Ramsey and Giroud. Giroud may have been
What, former
inconsistent times.
players?
Giroud scored 100 plus goals for the club. Yes, Theo did, but the difference with Walcott, if Giroud did it in half the amount of time, Walcott would have a couple of games, score a couple, Wenger would get right, and then he'd demand to play up front. When he wasn't that,
why are we singing
Theo, I
these
agree
players'
with.
names?
In
Theo, I
defence
agree
of
with.
Walcott, another thing.
What's that, Claude? Defending Walcott, yeah?
No, in defence of Walcott, there's another player where the manager misused
Agree.
him.
Oh, definitely.
And
definitely.
Another player that
Ox.
was misused. When he was at Southampton, he was playing as like a forward, proper forward.
But he was another player
But
that
we
was
had a
up
better-
He
Wenger's
comes
arse.
here. He comes here. He's playing wide.
But in fairness, we had better
Then he's
players.
in the middle. Then he's playing wider. He got messed
In
about by
fairness-
Wenger. He got
In
messed
fairness,
about by a lot by Wenger.
in fairness, the comparisons with Theo at the time, people looked at him as a new Henry. Henry came, was on the wing. He got pushed aside. Wenger has, in times, successfully changed the player's position.
Yeah.
And I know, well, I don't know how we've got to this so far away from Ramsey, but the reason why I disagree to an extent on the Walcott point is he wasn't the best striker at the club. He wasn't the best winger. We had better players in front of him. Even with Ox now is a completely different player than when he left the club. But in fairness, we had better players to play in that central mid role than.
But
Ox.
what I'm
Same
saying
with
is more
Walcott.
what the
We had Van
fans'
Persie and
affection
Henry at
is
the
to the
beginning.
players. That's what I'm saying.
but this is
Why
another-
have
this
we
is
got
another
affection to
problem.
Walcott and
there's-
Giroud and
Because this is the thing. There's also a lot of sentiment.
why? Why?
I can only think it's
You're
because of a
expecting
period
a
of
player
time.
like
Walcott
Chamberlain.
was
That's
there a long
another
time.
example. The Ox. You're expecting a player like the Ox, yeah, play him in his strongest position, and then you're playing him out wide, and you're expecting him to play his best football.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. And
But
that's
one thing about
another
Ox-
thing what Wenger done a lot with players, playing them out of position.
And one thing about Ox, you knew Ox didn't really like Wenger's methods. You knew that. He would never come out in support of Wenger. He accidentally liked the AFTV tweet one time. You could tell he wasn't happy with things that are going on. Whereas people like Walcott and Ramsey, they was up Wenger's arse,
But-
telling us fans, this is the man for us.
But put yourself in Ox's shoes, right? We don't know what goes around, like in terms of the actual training sessions.
No.
If you look at how the season panned out, Ox wanted either sponsor to mid, or he wanted to start week in, week out. He wanted game time. And you had players like Alex Sanchez who, because he didn't get that move he wanted, messed around, didn't really care, didn't really put in 100% at all. And in terms of Ox, you're looking at going, I'm giving 110%, doing everything I can to get myself as good as I can, to get myself to top level. And this guy in front's being a moron and getting away with it. And in fairness, in that situation, would you take a pay cut and leave to get game time? I'd do the same as Ox, and I don't disrespect Ox for leaving.
I think bringing it back to Ramsey though, what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
excited now is that I want to see. I like how he's finishing the season. He's
Yeah.
been, as you mentioned earlier, on professional. I think he's been one of our most impactful midfielders this season.
Definitely.
But I'm excited to see next year what Emery's going to do with that midfield, because whilst I would have preferred Ramsey to stay
Yep.
under this manager, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Emery that he's got a plan
Yep.
of how to utilise that space and also that money. Because
Yeah,
he
yeah,
must be
100%.
thinking, he can't be looking at it and thinking, you're not good enough for this team.
Yeah.
He must be thinking, you're good, but you're not going to do what I think we need to do.
Yeah,
You're not
and
the
you're not
midfielder
worth
I
what
want.
you're
Yeah.
asking.
So I'm excited to see what his plan is next year, because if it
Because
doesn't
you
work
think-
out, he'll get a lot of
That
heat.
Ramsey news came out in, was it October, November last year? So they announced that he's leaving very early. So they've had the sufficient time to plan ahead now. We should already have 2-3 names linked to us. But what I want to do to round it up is, I want to, obviously, Ramsey, is he a legend, Claude?
No, he's not a legend, but he's been a good player. He's not. I wouldn't go legend, because I think legends are ones that contribute to winning titles, proper titles.
Yeah. Jack,
And
how would you sum it up? Is Aaron Ramsey a legend?
If you look at the other players you categorise as legends, no. But if you take the term legend and base it on an era of the club's history, in that right, yes, but not in comparison to, obviously, as I've said from the beginning.
To the
Yeah.
real legends,
you have to-
let's say.
It's on the area.
Yeah, I
but
get you.
not-
so
I get what you're
you're
saying.
going on about this is where it comes down to the our
Standards.
standards are dropping.
Defining it, yeah.
That's where I'm in about the.
But then, in the greatest
our
respect,
standards.
Claude, with you were saying, for example, that we shouldn't be fighting for top 4. You said, I think, a couple of weeks ago that it should be the aim should be the league, not top 4. In
Yeah,
fairness,
that's what we should be.
if anybody said now that they thought we were going to get top 4 before the season and meant it and wasn't being over optimistic, they're lying. There wasn't that optimism. There wasn't. Everything was a fresh start. And
Yeah.
just really quick, just to summarise, just similar to what you said. Emery probably looks at it as it's a project, it's a building project,
Yeah.
it's a future. Should we bring in younger players who can gel in 2 years, be that player or better? that is what we have to do. We have to mould for the future. It's not about now, it's how we can get ourselves back into an era of success.
Yeah, but you say that. You said top four. I keep saying top four. People saying it's a miracle if we get top four. This is why really get annoyed. It annoys me because first of all, we had an 11-point start over Man United, who were complete chaos with their manager as well. Chelsea in the same situation, a new manager as well, right? Changing their whole philosophy of football. And now you're saying it's a miracle we're finishing the top four.
And would you
Why?
rather this than not having anything to play for?
I don't care. I'll stick by what I say. Top four is a minimum requirement this year for this guy.
Just finally, I mean, just brief on the top four thing. At the start of the season, if anybody said that Arsenal have one of the top four squads in the league, they'd be lying. One of the top four managers in the league, they'd be lying. Top four expenditure in the league, they'd be lying. So for me, top four, is an overachievement because we don't tick any of those boxes. In answer to your final question, is he a legend? Great servant for the club. He's given us great moments and he's been professional, but not a legend for me.
Yeah, so your answer is similar to Claude's basically. He's done a lot for us, but
there are levels, and for me, that top level of legend is maybe one tier below.
Yeah, this has been a good debate. I appreciate you guys for coming down. Jordan from the Football Fans Podcast, Jack obviously, and Claude, thank you for coming down. This has been the Supporters Club. So tell us what you think in the comments below. Aaron Ramsey, is he an Arsenal legend? Do you regret that we're letting him go? And who would you like to replace him? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe and do all of that stuff.